Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining Blockchain Global Governance Conference, FinSum Blockchain Business. It is now time to begin the next session, Bitcoin Community. We are having a panel discussion, and so let me introduce the panelists. Crypt Garage COO, Mr. Kozo Kato, CTO of Chaintop, Mr. Shigeyuki Azuchi, MIT Digital Currency Initiative Research Scientist, Mr. Thaddeus Draija. Mr. Draija is joining remotely, and the session's moderator is the CTO of Digital Garage DG Lab, Mr. Taro Watanabe. So without further ado, let me hand over to Watanabe-san. Good afternoon. Most of these conferences are held in English, but today all three members here on site are Japanese, and the Mr. Draija, who is joining online, is also very fluent in Japanese. So it's a rare occasion to have this session in Japanese. The purpose of this session is to foster a correct understanding of Bitcoin. Because from our perspective, there are some people with a misunderstanding or perhaps partial understanding of Bitcoin. So there are some dilemmas that we sometimes grapple with. So we would like to resolve that today and also touch upon some technical aspects of Bitcoin. And lastly, let us also discuss the businesses that can be developed with Bitcoin technology. So today we have various experts in the Bitcoin field. So first, for about 10 seconds, could you introduce yourselves? Starting from Mr. Azuchi.
Thank you. I'm Azuchi of Chaintop. Thank you for having me. Since around 2015, Bitcoin and library to distribute on the basis of Bitcoin, we have been conducting POC on elements and mainly focusing on product development using public blockchain. So those are the things that I've been working on over the years. Thank you.
And next, Mr. Draija. So I am working at MIT. My name is Draija. In 2011, I took an interest in Bitcoin and have been working to enhance Bitcoins. And 5 years ago, we developed a new technology, a Bitcoin Lightning Network, and then discrete log contracts, DLC smart contract system. Currently, we're working on Ultra XO, so smaller and faster Bitcoins.
Thank you. Last but not least, Kato-san of Crypto Garage. Thank you. I'm Kato, Crypto Garage. I'm not an engineer, but using Bitcoin technologies, I'm conducting business activities. So I want to make a contribution from a business perspective today. Thank you.
So let's start. And the first topic, very simple. What is Bitcoin? I'm sure that there are various aspects, so it's not something that can be explained in a nutshell, but I came up with this simple title so that each of the presenters can explain from their perspective, starting from Draija-san. So it's a very difficult to kill internet system. It's a digital currency, and there are various digital currencies in the world, but the Bitcoin system, even if you turn off one PC, even if you shut off all PCs, the Bitcoin will remain. So if all the Bitcoin PCs are shut down, then Bitcoin may disappear, but otherwise Bitcoin will always survive. So when I first learned about this, I thought this is amazing.
Thank you. Doraija-san, you are a Bitcoin researcher, developer, and you still are engaged in Bitcoin development. So you still conduct your activities within a Bitcoin community. How would you describe Bitcoin community? I oftentimes hear the term community, but we do not use Bitcoin community. There are many developers, but we do not look ourselves as comprising a community. And we do have an online community of Bitcoin, but in reality, those who use Bitcoin are not the members of a community, but they are using Bitcoin. You don't have to be in dialogue with anybody. You can just download Bitcoin and use Bitcoin for your purposes. There is, however, a community of Bitcoin developers. It's not a big community. Software developers, there are perhaps less than 100 Bitcoin software developers around the world. So we have a lot of meetings, gatherings. For example, DG Lab. At DG Lab, there was a conference 2 years ago in the United States and perhaps elsewhere. There will be a gathering of 40, 50 engineers looking at Bitcoin. But even if you do not participate in a community, you can use Bitcoin. And anonymous developers there are on the internet. You don't know the person, you haven't seen the person, but the person might come up with a new idea for the use of Bitcoin, and everybody would use that kind of a paper. So there is an anonymous community, and that makes Bitcoin more interesting.
Earlier in the Ethereum session, it was said that there are thousands of developers in the Ethereum community, but Bitcoin only has about 100 developers. So I think this it separates Bitcoin from Ethereum. And next, my question is to Azuchi-san. Amongst the Bitcoin developers, Bitcoin is an open source project. How about companies who are developing Bitcoin, as you are, Azuchi-san? So what kind of companies are developing Bitcoin, and what is their purpose? Well, in the case of our company, we are looking at assets. So we put the assets on top of the Bitcoin. So rather than simple remittance, we are able to consider various kinds of services on the Bitcoin network. So we want to make that easier. Existing web apps or smartphone apps, we would like to create something that can be easily embedded there. So we are creating a library for Bitcoin and the token-related business. And there are a lot of things that can be shared. So by making this open source, we are able to be in contact with various people and also receive feedback. For example, maybe this is a problem, or perhaps this could be improved. So by making this open source, I think there are many advantages that we can enjoy. And Bitcoin Core itself is based on C++, but the libraries, peripheral libraries, are being developed in various languages across the world. So there are many development communities around the world.
Thank you. Chaintope and others are engaged in developing Bitcoin, and other than you, there are many entities outside Japan, but in Japan, the companies involved in this process is a minority, so to speak. What are some of the companies in Japan which have been a part of process. Could you give us some names? When we talk about Bitcoin in Fukuoka, Nayuta, for example, what they're doing is that they are building a Lightning Network off-chain nodes. They are implementing these nodes. That's just one example. So in terms of second layer protocol, Crypto Garage obviously is in development of applications that are driven by Bitcoin.
Sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. So let me. I am from Digital Garage DG Lab. So it's a part of Digital Garage working on blockchain. So I'm a CTO, head of engineering team of blockchain. So here at DG Lab as well, we also develop blockchain technology. So amongst the companies named by Azuchi-san, I think that we can say that we do form a community of blockchain developing companies here in Japan. So let me go on to the next question. So going to the question here. Going back.
はい、よくそのなんですかね、いろんな仮想通貨だったりとかブロックチェーン技術って今
There are various cryptocurrencies and blockchain technologies, including Ethereum. So some people may think that because Bitcoin has existed from the past, that Bitcoin is maybe old and there are newer virtual currencies. And so sometimes in terms of blockchain, Bitcoin is called a blockchain 1.0. So perhaps some people think that this is an old, outdated technology. So I'd like to address this question to Azuchi-san.
Well, in terms of history, Bitcoin has the longest history. That is a fact. Everything started with Bitcoin when it comes to the history of virtual currencies. More than 10 years have passed since 2009. Bitcoin has been up and running for almost a decade. So in that sense, Bitcoin is old. But many improvements have been made. So Bitcoin has not remained as an old set of code base. There has been a progress. Improvements have been made, and since 2017, Lightning Network has been used to perform payment and settlement on the mainnet on top of Bitcoin. And furthermore, improvements are being made as we speak. So Bitcoin has always been at the cutting edge in trying to address new and emerging issues, and that process is continuing.
So many ongoing active projects. Rather, compared to before, I think that the speed is accelerating on the Bitcoin development. I agree. In a distributed environment, how to guarantee safety, I think a more robust network, not just the performance-related issues, but I think a more robust network is being developed. Thank you. So the next question. We often say that Bitcoin is not scalable compared to other blockchains. Other blockchains say that the speed is like 100 times faster than Bitcoin in order to appeal that technology. So is Bitcoin slow? Is it not scalable? So I guess Raija would have the answer to this question.
確かに、最初から
true that people ask this question. I read many papers on blockchain. They claim that they are faster than Bitcoin by a factor of 100, for example, but they are talking about a slightly different system. They're not based on the same rules as Bitcoin. So their behavior is not within the same scope as Bitcoin. It is true that Bitcoin has a scalability issue. It's challenging. But if you look into Bitcoin, in a sense, Bitcoin has scalability in a sense. For example, the consensus system, proof of work, a Nakamoto consensus, as you may call it, it's a very good scalability. Hundreds of millions of hundreds of trillions of hash, many personal computers will do the computation, and within a second, verification can be complete using personal computers or mobile phones or what have you. And Lightning Network and UTXO, the new researches, you don't have to change the Bitcoin system in trying to scale up, enhance scalability. It is true that there are scalability research on other systems, non-Bitcoin systems. But if you discover a good system, then it will be also it will be an opportunity for Bitcoin to soft fork, or it will be an opportunity for Bitcoin to develop further. So if you have a discovery outside of Bitcoin space, then this discovery can be applied to Bitcoin space as well. But as far as I know, there are papers that claim that their technology is faster than Bitcoin by a factor of hundreds. The use case is not the same as Bitcoin. So it's not an apple-to-apple comparison. So it doesn't make sense to compare Bitcoin and something else.
So the premises is different when comparing the speed. Thank you. So let me go to the next question. From yesterday, I have been listening to various sessions, and the smart contract is often discussed in a matter-of-fact way. But on the other hand, Bitcoin doesn't have a smart contract like Ethereum. I think many people think that Bitcoin doesn't have smart contract. So how about this one, Azuchi-san? Well, in the case of Bitcoin, using the open public key, the transfer uses the encrypted key, and this is all scripted. So such a script is not just the verification of such simple digital signatures, but various scripts are combined to realize this. So in that sense, we can say that I think that the smart contract is equipped. But the simple difference with Ethereum is that it is not a tunable program that can be executed. But so, do we really have to do this on-chain? Does the smart contract needs to be on-chain or not? I think that's something that should be considered. There are blockchains that has, for example, Wimble has very limited functionalities. So, not everything needs to be done on the blockchain, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Furthermore, a crypto garage has been using DLC to look at the P2P derivatives. It's a smart contract library using Bitcoin technologies. DLC technology was invented by Raja-san. That's why it's available. And Kato-san's crypto garage has been using this technology, and it's now in the form of library, which was launched recently. So smart contract, crypto garage has been engaged in smart contract, and what progress have you seen? Mr. Kato? I know that many of you are familiar with this, but as was mentioned by Mr. Azuchi, if you ask whether smart contract is possible with Bitcoin, it is true that in script, if sentence, so if you condition a behavior, that can be done. But I know that everybody is familiar with this, but Bitcoin is on a delicate balance, so we don't want to destroy this delicate balance of Bitcoin. How to preserve this delicate balance is a big question. Whether to do it on an on-chain or off-chain, you have to make a decision. And conditions sentence scripted and implemented, whether it is economically viable or not. What is a penalty model, and how can we enjoy the economic benefit by not compromising trust? It's not just a question of script. So to implement as you had anticipated, we'll have to secure a community and use case, and those in the community and the use case people will have to conduct a verification to make it widely available. So use case using DLC has been launched by Crypto Garage, but this is just one idea, and there is a need for verification everywhere, so there is no loophole, and we have to verify it is truly effective. And this verification has been done from different perspectives. And that is what Bitcoin community has always been, and this is what the Bitcoin culture has always been.
So let me add my 2 cents from a different perspective. It's often said that the Ethereum's smart contract is very flexible, and it's actually incomplete. So basically, you can do anything on the Ethereum smart contract. On the other hand, this is not possible on Bitcoin. When you really delve into the technical details, it becomes a bit difficult to understand. But put simply, based on a certain trigger, money is transferred. And this requires high level of security. So easy, but with some vulnerable risk. That cannot be applied to Bitcoin. I think that this is kind of a consensus amongst the developing community. So the smart contract that Bitcoin is aiming for is really placing a lot of importance on security and stability. So I think Bitcoin has a very strict view in terms of security. Of course, Ethereum level flexibility is a smart contract is something that we should aim for, and something that is possible. But I apologize to the Ethereum people for comparing, but I believe that more secure smart contract compared to the other blockchains is required for Bitcoin. So a very perfect, secure Bitcoin smart contract is what I think the community is aiming for. And there are various technical dilemmas that is being faced by the engineers. And Kato-san's Crypto Garage has more or less developed the protocol, even though it is still primitive compared to Ethereum. So they are already in a testing phase. Recently, Bitcoin-based smart contract research is growing all over the world. So if developing proceeds, I think that it could become very interesting.
So why don't we discuss some technical aspects I don't think it's time for detailed technical explanation. So within the developers community of Bitcoin, what are the hot technologies that developers are looking at? Doraija-san, could you brief us on that?
Let's see. 次の、ビットコインの、
The next
変わること、
upcoming
新しいこと、多分、そのシュノータップ、
change.
シュノー、
シュノータップ。
ビットコインの基本のことは、デジタル証明。
Digital certification,
みたいな感じで、じゃあ
signature
私のお金
income.
がここに送ります。
This money is sent, money of here is sent to there. The certification should be enhanced, multi-sig, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, the same certification proof. This has to be more flexible and this has to be more rigorous.
簡単のスマートコントラクトをサポートする。
And supporting simple smart contract software, for example.
今日ならこの二人の証明
These two individuals' certifications can be sent today, but tomorrow the additional 3 can sign off.
まあお金を動かす
So moving money,
スマートコントラクトという
that's what involved. But Schnorr Taproot,
中にビットコインに
and I would expect that this will be implemented on Bitcoin by the end of this year. Jeremy Rubin is working on smart contract system, and his smart contract system, I don't know whether this will be associated with Bitcoin, but that's one of the research activities that we're witnessing.
ビットコインの
And Bitcoin PCs, if you use Bitcoin, it could be heavy. If you use Bitcoin with your Note PC, and hundreds of giga space will be consumed, and it will consume significant amount of memory. So UTXO's objective is to compress that, minimize that. It will be not in the term unit of gigabyte, but it will be miniaturized the gigabyte size. And so we are developing such software as well.
Thank you. So basically, scalability is being expanded with some new innovative technology, and the introduction of such new technology is coming soon. So the community is reviewing these new technologies in a very active manner. So it's quite interesting these days. And I'd also like to ask, on the business side, in order to develop services using Bitcoin, and not just Bitcoin, but in terms of the cryptocurrencies, there are exchanges, and but there are also other businesses outside of these exchanges. But after these cryptocurrency exchanges have been developed, we don't really see any kind of a killer business, very big cryptocurrency-related business successes. Is that because of some technical hurdles, or are there any difficulties in developing businesses? So Crypto Garage is not an exchange, but you are also developing some business using the Bitcoin technology, and you're trying to commercialize that. So, as you are engaged in developing business and services using Bitcoin technology, what are the obstacles, what are the challenges, and what are the superiorities of the technology? What are your thoughts on this based on your experience? Well, I myself am not really an engineer, so perhaps my engineers will disagree with me. But we are using Bitcoin technology to develop businesses. As you know, Bitcoin is open source, so anybody can do it if they want to. But in order to provide a business, then there are some corporate responsibilities, of course, but it is not really easy for everybody to develop business using Bitcoin technology. For example, when you provide a service based on Bitcoin, during the service development, of course, you create many types of services and you test it and you verify it. And in order to test, you need any things. So I think these are the normal system development processes. But Bitcoin doesn't really have a very detailed service in terms of this. So people who are core or developers may say that it's open source, you can do it. And true, if you really want to, it's possible, but it is not easy. It takes time in order for us to commercialize services based on Bitcoin. And the people who want to do business using Bitcoin, the fact that it's very distant, it takes time to develop business. Because their main focus is developing the business, not really the technical side. So these many companies want to skip that initial part. But for example, if you want to build a building, you have to really start from the building blocks, and you have to start from developing the tools. And you have to develop, for example, the testing method. There are different libraries to improve efficiency, but for example, you can't really conduct the tests in automated manner or when operating or monitoring. Everything has to be developed for Bitcoin-related technology. So it takes a lot of time to commercialize the business. So services that can fill that gap. I'm sure that open source is possible, monitoring service and so on. Or testing verification services. I think once these gaps are filled, it will become much easier to develop Bitcoin related business. And based on these use cases, then I think more and more people will be able to join. So currently, there is still a big distance from the Bitcoin technology to business development.
And regulation is also another issue, particularly in Japan, right? We are facing JFSA, so I'm not sure whether I should say this, but as was mentioned during the Ethereum session, crypto asset in that space, Bitcoin and blockchain, Bitcoin cannot be carved out from a blockchain. And if you talk about things that are related to Bitcoin, it's not that the society at large is receptive to Bitcoin. It's not that there is no limitations. And those in the Ethereum session talked about being cautious. And it applies to Bitcoin as well. You might have a wonderful idea, but can you do this? If you want to do this as a business, implementation could take longer than one might expect, so you might hesitate. So it takes too much time to translate a new idea into business, and that, I believe, is a major challenge.
Thank you. But Bitcoin is still being developed into business all over the world. And I think one keyword is finance that we see lately. For example, DeFi is one example. So I'd like to touch upon the finance and Bitcoin. Of course, Bitcoin and blockchain are inseparable. And Bitcoin as a financial asset, globally, what are the services being developed? And what do you think is the progress of Bitcoin as a financial asset? So Kato-san, please. From the cryptocurrency work, I am active mostly overseas. So Bitcoin, rather than as a technology, as a financial asset. So I am often in contact with people who recognize Bitcoin as a financial asset. In Japan, Bitcoin and other virtual currencies are very well known amongst the public. But people who want to own or trade Bitcoin are people who like novel or new things. And many people see this as an extension of FX trade. But on the other hand, outside of Japan, as we have seen on the news, normal companies are viewing Bitcoin as one of the ways to own their asset. And the derivatives, rather than speculative derivative, demand-based derivatives are being traded. For example, we often call Bitcoin miners. After mining, what do they do with it? They can sell it, of course, but what happens if the Bitcoin's value goes up after sales? So many people have these kind of primitive concerns, and kind of investment bank type brokerage services being provided to the miners. So as an option, no trade, providing interest benefits. So Bitcoin could grow as a financial asset. And so I think this kind of a perspective and related business surrounding Bitcoin could perhaps change the public's view on Bitcoin.
Thank you. I know that the time is short, so why don't we wrap up our discussion amongst ourselves? So why don't I invite each of our panelists once again to give us his concluding remarks in the remaining 5 minutes, so maybe 1 minute each. So why don't we start with Raja-san? Raja-san. More recently, DCI at MIT, we are working with Fed, the U.S. Central Bank, to look at CDBC. We launched research on CDBC, CBDC, Central Bank Digital Currency. Well, it's somewhat related to Bitcoin, but it's not related to Bitcoin. And we haven't decided whether Bitcoin technologies should be used, but we look at the learnings from Bitcoin, and technologies that come out of Bitcoin could be used for CBDC in the future. If you're not interested in Bitcoin itself and Bitcoin is associated with hackers, I mean, that might be a legitimate concern, but the Bitcoin technologies have taught us a lot of things, and the findings from Bitcoin technology can be applicable to other systems. So working with FRB is a very interesting, stimulative exercise for us at MIT. We have a lot of research going on in the Bitcoin space, and these research results can be applicable to other spaces as well.
That's very interesting. So rather than using Bitcoin, working with FRB with the Bitcoin technology, I think that's very interesting. So Atsushi-san, please. Shino approved. That's a new technology that was mentioned earlier, and introduction is coming soon. Bitcoin in 2017, the last Segwit update was made, and then thereafter there has not been any consensus update. So that is coming shortly. I think it's going to be a very exciting year for us. And this is rather not very new protocol for light devices like mobile phones is also coming up. So new nodes are being created, and using these nodes, I believe that the ecosystem will expand going forward. So I'm really looking forward to the up-and-coming new technologies in this field, and I will continue to work on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Kato-san. Earlier on, I talked about the gap in terms of the time required from idea to business. Raja-san have talked about UTXO, Schnorr approval. I mean, what kind of debate will there be within the community, and what is the history of this debate within the community? And the business side should be familiar with the discussion in the development community. Unless you understand that, you will not get new business ideas. So Bitcoin Optech is an organization out there, and what they're doing is to bridge the researchers community and the business community, but not many people know about this initiative in Japan. So those in the business universe should be at the cutting edge of the technological development. They should be familiar with the cutting edge discussions, and those in business should at least have an interest in the latest discussion in the developers community. And we often talk about this within our organization. Unless you are keen to learn from the developers community, we in Japan could be lagging behind, and the business entities could lag behind. And so we in the business community should be close to the developers community and familiarize ourselves with their discussion.
And I would like to also comment. Normally, in Japanese business tends to be market in. So there's a user need, and then how to create business to meet those needs, and then create the product. This is common sense. And has been cultivated for many years. But actually, Bitcoin is a product out only. So users have never really wanted Bitcoin, and we've never done a questionnaire asking if they want Bitcoin. It's not that we have listened to the feedback from the users to brush up Bitcoin. So engineers with a passion came together and developed Bitcoin, and then it was accepted by the market. So in that sense, the growth of Bitcoin is quite unique. And we who are involved in the development of Bitcoin has a kind of a product out mindset, and the creativity of the engineers is the biggest driver. Of course, the business side is also important in order to monetize this, but the developers' passion and capability and using everything that they have to create these products. So I think this will continue to drive the Bitcoin related business going forward, and perhaps that is different from other industries. Perhaps this is a very unique aspect of Bitcoin. So we welcome our colleagues with the same passion. There are only a few companies in Japan who are working on Bitcoin. So if you are interested in Bitcoin, please come and talk to us, and perhaps we can work on R&D or product development together. Thank you. This concludes our session. Thank you, Mr. Kato. Thank you, Mr. Azuchi. And thank you, Mr. Draija, and the moderator, Mr. Watanabe. Thank you all for participating today. With this, we conclude the session on the Bitcoin community. Let me announce the next session. From 4:20, we will have the session on the STO and future of real estate market. And from 2:20, we will have in Hall B, the International Joint Research Introduction session. Those of you participating online, please select the relevant URL. The next session will be starting at 2:20. Thank you very much.